Greetings and salutations, or welcome anew. My name is Yaneli, and today I'm going to be your guide at the viewing of Holo Taco's Holo Renaissance collection. This ensemble consists of 6 lustrous jewel-tone crushed holographic polishes, and this collection is not limited edition. It is here to stay. As a disclaimer, I did not purchase this collection myself. Holo Taco was nice enough to send it to me over as gifted PR. I'm not obligated to talk about it, post about it, or create any form of contact with it, but this is out of my free will, and I am here to showcase swatches and comparisons and all that good stuff with this collection. As with any other video, all comparisons and final thoughts are near the end, so stay tuned. And without further ado, let's get into swatches. Up first, we have Far From the Tree, and this is a swampy forest green crushed holographic polish. Now, on the first coat for me, this applied very, very good. Like, it was almost a one coater, but there was some patchiness near the tip of the nail. For me, this type of green is leaning just ever so slightly yellow, so maybe some yellow undertones are in here. After the first coat, I noticed that the polish does dry matte, so a glossy top coat is recommended, especially if you want to see those crushed holographic pigments and the tiny flare that they give out. For me, I got full coverage in 2 coats. I will say that the formula does feel a little bit thick, but nowhere near as thick as the chunky glitter holo from the Pixel Perfect collection, but not as thin as the linear holos that Holo Taco has. It's kind of in between those two, but I'm not having a hard time applying or getting close to the cuticle area. For the glossy top coat, it's where the formula really works the best in. That's where you get all those holos and whatnot shining in. A matte really dulls it down, but it also gives it an edgy look. Next up, we have Venetian Views, and this is a dark teal crushed holographic shade. Now, to me, I felt like this one leaned just ever so slightly more towards the green aspect of teal. I also got really impressive coverage on the first coat, like pretty much felt like I had full coverage in one coat, but I definitely want to go in with a second coat just to make sure and also deepen the color. This polish does dry semi-matte, so again, a glossy top coat is definitely recommended if you want to capture those holos well. This is another really easy to apply polish. I didn't feel like I was struggling in brushing it on the nail, and with it being a crushed holo formula, it dried down very smooth. However, I still think you should put a top coat on just to seal it in. So this is one of the caveats that I have with crushed holo, in that the holo flare isn't as prominent, but I always tend to just see silver specks more so than a holo flare. And then here it is with the glossy and matte top coat. Again, glossy brings the holo more to life, and it doesn't look bad matte either. It just depends on what type of vibe you want to go with. Next up, we have Nightlife, and this is a darkish middle gray silver shade with the crushed holographic pigment going throughout. Now, this shade is really reminding me of the Gala monochromatic collection that Holo Taco had some time ago. I feel like they share the same gray silverness aspect of it, but we'll see more later on in comparison, so stay tuned. Also, it makes sense that this is called Nightlife. I like the play on words of like nightlife, like N-I-G-H-T or N-I-T-E, but night as in you're being knighted kind of thing. So I love a good punny name, so this one definitely lives up to the expectation. And can I say that this shade of gray is very reminiscent of armor that I've seen in medieval museums. So it's that dull gray almost. I know it has holo in it, so it makes it a little bit more sparkly, but when you add a matte top coat to it, it just really gives that dull gray armor vibe to it. Just like the others, this one applied very nicely. I got full coverage in 2 coats. Someone with longer or wider nails may need an additional coat, but I think 2 right now has been really the key number for these polishes so far. Next up, we have Smalt Off the Earth, and this is a dark blue crushed holographic shade. So I had to search up what smalt meant, because otherwise the name of this polish left me very, very confused. And turns out that smalt is a glass colored blue with cobalt oxide. So interesting for me, on the bottle I see blue, but then to me it feels like there's hints of indigo in here. And I think it shows more so on that first coat that the shade leans a little bit more true indigo versus a true blue. It's also reminding me of Midnight Spark and how there was a tobacco with, is this blue, is this indigo, is this orange, you know. but we'll definitely compare those two later on in the video. But for now, this polish did apply nicely just as the others did. Excellent coverage on the first coat, a little patchy, but full coverage on 2 coats with the color deepening more. And now to me, with the second coat, it looks more blue, but it's kind of like you can trick your mind. You can make yourself see blue, but you can also make yourself see indigo, you know? Anywho's, I really like this color when it's glossy. It makes the color more vibrant in my opinion. When it's matte, it still looks nice, but like, again, I gravitate towards the gloss. Next up, we have Cardinal Sins, and this is a warm leaning red with pink undertones, and of course, a crushed holographic polish. Now, I do have a preconception with reds in that they're going to apply very patchy and uneven. However, I'm very glad to see that this one did not apply in such matters, and it actually applied really, really nice. Like, I could almost constitute this as a one coater. However, I do see a little bit of sheerness near the tip of my nail, so going in with a second coat, and then I know for sure that this gave me full coverage, as all of these polishes have been really high coverage for the most part. It just depends on how much you overwork it, and I really don't recommend that you overwork this polish because it does start dragging the layer underneath. Now, something I haven't talked about with these polishes is that there is an amazing self-leveling mechanism going on here. So even though it's crowded with the crushed holo, like, it self-levels and smooths itself out really, really nicely. So I know there's jewel toneness being talked about with this collection, and I'll be straight up, I have no idea what that means. So of course, when we don't know anything, we do critical thinking and we go to Google and we ask, what are jewel tones? And from a colorsmeaning.com, I have here, jewel tones are colors that are modeled after and or named for precious gemstones. Most are rich, deep colors that are very saturated. So yeah, I think this definitely fits the bill, and here we are swatching vine to table. Okay, so this one was described as a Merlot shade. When I looked up Merlot, and from what I remember when swatching Island Peace Merlot, it doesn't have enough redness or berry colorness to fit the bill. So to me, this is more of a plum purple shade. But anyways, this one performed just as great as the other ones have. I had full coverage in 2 coats, and it was very nice to see the color really deepened itself with the second coat. It gave it more of that juicy plum look. It was very easy to apply. It self-leveled out very nicely and everything. And of course, I enjoy this color. Like, who doesn't like a vampy purple of sorts, right? And of course, showing it here glossy and matte. I really like how it looks both ways, honestly. With the matte, it just gives it, I don't know how to describe this feeling, but it's not ethereal, but it's very close to that, at least for me. And then here we are with a different lighting shot. So on my left hand, I have from pinky to thumb, Venetian views, vine to table, Venetian views, smalt of the earth, and Venetian views. On the right hand, I have from pinky to thumb, far from the tree, cardinal sins, far from the tree, nightlife, and far from the tree. So on all of these shots, I am wearing 2 coats of each polish. There is no top coat on these, so this is how the polishes look like without any gloss or matte. This is just the polishes themselves, and here you can see that they dry semi-matte. And throughout all 3 lighting situations here, I had a really hard time seeing the holo flares show up, even in direct sunlight. Now moving on to comparisons. Up first, for far from the tree, I have here Holo Taco's Ivy League and Holo Taco's Lost in the Woods. I predominantly picked these 2 because I felt like the greens would be similar, but also I picked Lost in the Woods because I wanted to compare a linear holographic next to the crushed holo. That way you can see the differences there as well. But I will say Ivy League is much, much darker, and Lost in the Woods almost looks a little teal compared to Far from the Tree. And I just love the holo flares of Lost in the Woods, and that's not something that I am getting easily from Far from the Tree. And then I thought of comparing it next to Holo Taco's Everything is Pine and Holo Taco's Sour Note. I predominantly picked Everything is Pine because, again, I wanted to compare the greens, but also Everything is Pine has a different set of holographic pigment in there, and you can see how vibrant those are and appear even without a glossy top coat. And again, I'm having a hard time seeing that with Far From the Tree. And then Sour Note is another crushed holographic polish, and I wanted to showcase how different the crushed holo looks on a much lighter shade compared to a much darker shade. In Far From the Tree, it almost gives the illusion that the crushed holo is bigger, whereas in Sour Note it looks like they're smaller, but I believe they're the same size. Next up, I have Holo Taco's Foiled Again and Island Peace Countryside. So I predominantly picked Foiled Again because it has a similar tonality in the bottle to Far From the Tree, but on the nail you can see the difference. Foiled Again has these green flakies that kind of add a little bit more extra vibrancy to it. And then Island Peace Countryside is a scattered holographic, and here you can see the differences between a crushed holo and a scattered holographic pigment in the polish. And Island Peace Countryside is very, very different from Far From the Tree, being this almost olive, dark, murky green of sorts. Moving on over to Venetian Views, I have here Holo Taco's Teal With It and Holo Taco's Emerald City. So I chose Teal With It because I wanted to compare it next to a teal, since Venetian Views itself is a teal. However, Teal With It is much more blue leaning than Venetian Teals is. Emerald City for me felt like it had a very similar base color to Venetian Views. However, Emerald City is much darker, and Venetian Views almost looks a little pale quite in comparison. I feel like Emerald City just has a higher saturation. So then I thought of comparing it next to deeper, darker teals. So here I have Holo Taco's Starry Eyed and Holo Taco's Lost in the Wood. So Starry Eye for me is that really deep, rich teal base color, and when compared to Venetian Views, I feel like Venetian Views almost pulls a little green leaning, and then Starry Eyed almost pulls almost black in the base, but also very dark blue is kind of showing up for me. And then I picked Lost in the Woods because I felt that it looked tealed when I compared it from Far From the Tree, and I feel like it does look teal, as it's almost very similar to Venetian Views. However, I feel that Lost in the Woods is much darker than Venetian Views. I thought of comparing it next to Holo Taco's Far From the Tree, which is within this collection, and Holo Taco's Bring Me the Teal. So I chose Far From the Tree because at a glance, to me, when I saw the marketing of this collection, I felt that Far From the Tree and Venetian Views were very close in my opinion, and seeing them next to each other, I can tell the difference. Like, one is obviously a dark green, the other one is showing up more of a teal, a little bit blue leaning when compared to an actual green in my opinion. But I still feel that at a quick glance you almost feel like you are seeing double. And then Bring Me the Teal is the creme version of teal, and I just wanted to see how it looks next to it. Then rounding up the comparisons for Venetian Views, I have here Island Peace Forever and Mooncat's Drown My Demons. Island Peace Forever is a teal metallic polish with some holo in the mix, and I wanted to see how that compared to Venetian Views in terms of formulation. However, Island Peace Forever is very shiny, and the shade of it is much paler in comparison to Venetian Views. Now, Mooncat's Drown My Demons is a magnetic, however, I have it here unmagnetized, and I thought of comparing it next to Venetian Views because at certain angles it gives off teal vibes. However, these two are very different because one of them is predominantly a blue base with green shimmer. Now moving on over to comparisons for nightlife, I have here Holo Taco's Highest Bidder and Holo Taco's Ride or Diamond. So I picked Highest Bidder because I was also curious in how Nightlife compared to those in the Gala collection, and Highest Bidder is much lighter of a gray silver tone than I had remembered, whereas Nightlife is almost showing like a black base with silver specks going throughout, honestly. And then Ride or Diamond is even paler than Highest Bidder, and it's almost like a white silver of sorts, very different. And then I thought of comparing it next to Holo Taco's Great and Holo Taco's Smoke Show. So Holo Taco's Great is almost this semi-black charcoal type of shade with it bouncing off a little bit silver / gray. And then Holo Taco Smoke Show is also part of the Gala collection. And I would say if it weren't for the chunky glitters, I would say the amalgamation of it is very close to Nightlife, but there is those subtle differences there. Next up, we have Island Peace Moonlit and Holo Taco's Blacklist. So Island Peace Moonlit is a magnetic polish. However, I'm showing it here unmagnetized just to get that comparison of the silvers and grays going throughout. So for me, Moonlit is more of that fine, like true smooth silver, whereas Nightlight has those specklings of what almost seems black and silver to me. And then Blacklist, it has a predominantly black base with the metallicness showing throughout with the light reflecting on it, so not quite. Rounding out comparisons for Nightlife, I have here Mooncat's Death Star and Mooncat's Imperial Stormtrooper. Now these two polishes are magnetic and Imperial Stormtrooper is a thermal. However, I am showing them here unmagnetized and Imperial Stormtrooper is just chilling with whatever temperature I have going on. So Death Star is a much pale white silver. Imperial Stormtrooper is that gunmetal gray of sorts, and if it weren't for the crushed holo, I feel like Imperial Stormtrooper and Nightlife would be very close to each other. Moving on over to Smalt of the Earth, I have here Holo Taco's Midnight Spark and Holo Taco's Silent Library. So I talked about it before, but I wanted to compare Midnight Spark with Smalt of the Earth, as to me they kind of had the base color very similar to each other. However, on the nail, Midnight Spark is more of a vibrant and a more distinct blue compared to Smalt of the Earth. To me, Smalt of the Earth still looks more indigo-ish compared to Midnight Spark. And then Silent Library is completely different here. It's such a dark black base and just the ever glimpse of blue showing up. And then I thought of comparing it next to Holo Taco's Sunken Secrets and Holo Taco's Going Solo, just to compare the blue bases of sorts. And in the swatches here, Sunken Secrets is more of a true dark blue, whereas Smalt of the Earth kind of looks like a lighter shade of blue in between these two. And then Going Solo is more of a black base with blue shimmer going throughout. So then I thought of comparing it next to Holo Taco's Playing with Sapphire and Mooncat's Night Mode. So Playing with Sapphire is that deep, rich blue of sorts. And then Mooncat's Night Mode is more of a purple metallic shade. So I wanted to see how it looked next to a true blue and a true purple-esque color with some silver tonalities in it. And I feel like Smalt of the Earth here does look blue. Again, it's just one of those shades that you can play off as one moment looking blue, the other moment looking indigo. And then I have here Island Peace Midnight Kiss and Island Peace Grapevine. So I wanted to compare it next to these two because Midnight Kiss is of a deeper vibrant blue and Grapevine to me is an indigo shade with scattered holographics in the mix. And when I see these three colors together, I feel like Smalt of the Earth definitely looks very similar to how the base color of Grapevine is. Moving on to comparisons for cardinal scents, I have here Holo Taco Red Licorice and Holo Taco's Favorite Sister. So I wanted to compare the reds really just so you can see the differences between the tonalities of the reds. So Red Licorice to me is more of a red pink base, whereas Favorite Sisters is more of a almost true red, but it does lean a little bit of an orange undertone, and of course it's metallic. Now cardinal scents to me does scream out like strawberry jam type of vibe, so there you go. Then we have here Holo Tacos Ruby Madly Deeply and Holo Tacos Jam Session. So I wanted to share these two because Ruby Madly Deeply does have some holographic pigments in there. However, even here you can see that they are more vibrant than how Cardinal Sin's holo shows. And then Ruby is more of a orangey leaning warm red, and then Jam Session is a crushed holographic polish as well. However, it is more pinky based than how Cardinal Sin's here looks much darker compared to the two other ones. Then here we have Island Peace Roloi and Mooncat's My Sandy Claus outfit. So I picked these two just again based on the reds, but Merlot is that deep, rich red and it's cool tone as well. And then my Sandy Claus outfit is very pink leaning red, and it does have some holographics going in. I predominantly wanted to showcase those two together, but you can clearly see the differences between the three of them. Moving on over to Vine to Table, and I have here Island Peace Merlot and Island Peace Honeymoon. I wanted to compare it next to Merlot because it was initially described by the brand as a Merlot shade, and I kind of wanted to showcase the differences between what I would consider a proper Merlot shade versus a plum shade. And then Honeymoon is almost a plum shade, but it's just a little bit juicier because it is a jellyish formula. And both Island Peace shades have scattered holographics, so again you can see the difference between micro scattered holographics compared to crushed holo. And then I want to compare it next to Holo Tacos Plum Luck and Holo Tacos Magenta Jelly. And I picked these two because I felt like they were the most plummy colors that I have within my collection. And Plum Luck is a little bit of a darker plum color compared to Vine to Table, but I think you can see here that Vine to Table just really resonates more with it being a plum color. And then Magenta Jelly is of a vibrant variety and it is a linear holographic. So again, you can see the different ways each polish's holographics pigments shine throughout. And then lastly, I have here Holo Tacos Crystal Mommy and Holo Tacos Electric Sweetener. So none of these really look like Vine to Table, but I thought it'd be a fun comparison to see how Vine to Table looks next to vibrant-ish purples. And also Electric Sweetener is the purple crushed holo polish of the Rock Candy collection. So again, just wanted to showcase how the crushed holos look on a lighter base color versus a darker base color. And that concludes the swatch and comparisons portion of this video. Please let me know any and all your thoughts down below. Will you be interested in getting the whole collection? Are you saving some up for the Black Friday sale? Let me know. So overall for me, I am a huge fan of like dark moody colors. So the essence of this collection was something that I'm interested in. However, I am not a big fan of crushed holo just because I feel that it's hard to see the actual holo aspect of it. Like even now as I have them on my hand here, they predominantly show as little specks of silver. It's not very much the holographic shining within, you know? To me, it's just a speck of silver, and the fact that I would have to really look for any holo in here is kind of what throws me off from crushed holos. Like linear holos, scattered holos, chunky holo particles, those are prominent. And even in my current setup that I have, I would be able to see the holo aspect of those pigments. And with these ones, it's so hard to actually see the holo aspect. And again, to me, the polish just looks like it has grains in it, like it's grainy. So imagine your leg's asleep and it's waking up. You know that sensation? That's how I would honestly describe these polishes. Or like static TV, like the fuzzy static, like the gray and black. That's what these look like, but in color format. I do have one caveat, and it's, I think, pretty self-explanatory if you've been watching a couple of my videos now. But I am not a fan of similar colors within the collection. So I'm looking at Far From the Tree and Venetian Views. At a glance, I feel that those two are very similar. But like when you stop and actually take a look at them, like you see the difference. I don't think this collection needed two adjacent greens of sorts. I feel like a gold or brassy counterpart would have paired better. Like when they were showing the promotional stuff on Instagram, they had the polishes in like a little gold frame. That took a nice break from moody, moody, moody to our eyes getting a break with the gold. But yeah, those are my final thoughts and opinions. Again, would love to hear yours and what your plans are for this collection. If you'd like to watch more Holo Taco swatch videos, you can click over here. Or if you'd like to see what other stuff I have swatched, you can click on my profile and it'll take you to my page. Thank you so much for watching and hanging out with me, and I'll see you on the next one. Bye!